All right, let's just jump right in. The title of this book, Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic. Well, that's a title that makes you stop and think, right? For a lot of people, those two things, being a Christian and being an alcoholic, feel like they just can't exist in the same person. But that's the exact tension we're going to unpack here.
And this is how the author Jonathon Seidl describes himself. Just think about that image for a second. This wasn't someone on the fringes of faith who got into trouble. No, this was a guy who was all in, a husband, a dad, an active believer, who was completely falling apart in the one place he was supposed to feel the safest. It was a totally hidden battle.
And that brings us to the big question, really. How does this happen? How can someone live this life of faith on the outside while a life of addiction is raging on the inside? It's a question that kind of challenges everything we think we know, and Seidl's story gives us some really raw, honest answers.
So, to really get it, we've got to go back to the moment it all came crashing down. See, this isn't just some theory for him. It's a story built on a real, profound crisis that just laid everything out in the open.
This timeline really shows you the anatomy of hitting rock bottom. It all starts so innocently, right? I'll just have a few drinks to relax. But for him, a few was a promise he almost never could keep. And that's where things just spiral. The night gets out of control, and the next day, this huge wave of shame just crashes over him. Then he lies to his wife, and suddenly it's not just a personal failure anymore, it's a crisis in his marriage.
That meltdown in Miami, it forced him to finally face a question that had been whispering in his ear for over a decade. It's a question a lot of us might ask ourselves in quiet moments. Am I an alcoholic? But it turns out the way we even answer that question has totally changed.
Okay, so this is huge. Medically speaking, the question, am I an alcoholic, is kind of outdated. The term now is alcohol use disorder, or AUD. And here's the key. It's not a simple yes or no, black or white thing. It's a spectrum. The official guide, the DSM-5, uses 11 different criteria to figure out where someone falls from mild to severe. This completely reframes the whole issue away from being a moral failing and treats it as a diagnosable medical condition.
And this is where Seidl really flips the script. He argues the most important question isn't how much you drink. The real test is, what is your relationship with it? When a substance becomes, in his words, misordered, when it takes up a space in your life that it was never meant to have, that's when you have a disordered relationship, and that is the real problem.
So, this leads us to the next layer of the onion. If a disordered relationship with alcohol is the what, then we have to ask why. What Seidl discovered was that his drinking wasn't actually the core issue at all. It was just a symptom of something buried way, way deeper.
And listen to this. These are the words of his wife, Brett. How incredibly insightful is that? She saw that his drinking was just a tool, a coping mechanism. She knew that even if he stopped, he'd just find something else to numb the pain unless he dealt with the real stuff going on underneath. The real work had to go deeper.
Let's think of it like this. The drinking itself, that was the fruit. It was the thing on the outside, the visible, tangible behavior. For Seidl, alcohol was basically an anesthetic. It was his way to escape the constant noise of anxiety, the heavy weight of depression, and the sting of feeling like he was failing in his life and career.
But fruit doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It grows from roots. And through therapy, Seidl started digging up these deep, hidden wounds from his past. We're talking about things like family chaos, childhood trauma, feeling totally misunderstood and suppressed. All this stuff was the fuel for his need to escape. The drinking was just the exit ramp he happened to take.
Okay, so facing all that stuff, that's step one. But what's next? How do you actually move forward? For Seidl, the answer was to merge his faith with the hard work of recovery. He needed a spiritual game plan for real, lasting freedom.
He boils it down to this two-part idea he calls killing versus filling. The first part, mortification, is all about actively fighting the sin, stopping the destructive behavior. But that's only half the battle. If you stop there, you're just left with a big empty hole. That's where vivification comes in. That's about intentionally filling that void with something life-giving, something real, like a deep relationship with God. It's like you can't just pull the weeds in a garden. You've got to plant some flowers in their place, right? And this whole process breaks down into 4 really practical steps. First, you abide in Christ, you make your home there. Then you start to find your real identity in who God says you are, not in your mistakes. The third one is a game changer, practicing not just vulnerability, but radical vulnerability. We'll talk more about that. And finally, you learn to obey, to act on the guidance you're given.
But let's be super clear about something. Following these steps, it isn't some magic formula for a perfect, easy life. As Seidl really drives home, the path to recovery is not a straight line. It's not clean. It is the messy, messy work of healing.
This quote just hits so hard. This is what he means by radical vulnerability. Think about it. Being 99% known is basically the same as being totally unknown. Because that last 1%, that's where all the fear and shame live. That's the part you're terrified will make you unlovable. True healing only happens when you bring everything, all 100%, out into the light.
And you know, to really understand what this looks like, there's this incredible story from C.S. Lewis's book, The Great Divorce. It just perfectly captures the fear and the absolute necessity of this kind of total surrender. So in the story, there's a man who has this lizard on his shoulder, and it's constantly whispering junk in his ear. An angel comes along and offers to kill it for him, but the man panics. He's afraid that killing the lizard will kill him. And the angel's response is the key to everything. He says, "I never said it wouldn't hurt you. I said it wouldn't kill you." The man finally agrees, and yeah, it's painful, but he's not destroyed. Instead, both he and the lizard are transformed into something beautiful and strong. That's radical vulnerability. It hurts, but it doesn't kill you. It saves you.
So at the end of the day, the big idea here is this. Freedom from addiction, or from any deep struggle, really, isn't a finish line you cross one day. It's what Seidl calls messy sanctification. It's this ongoing, day-by-day process of killing and filling, of messing up and getting back up, all of it covered by grace.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought. A question for you. Seidl's story is all about the power of dragging the darkness into the light. So what about your story? What lizard is on your shoulder? And what would it take to finally let it be seen?